Chairman, I want to speak in particular to clause 88 of the bill, which is part of the amendments to the Income Tax 2004 legislation. Although, having looked at the Income Tax Act 2004, I find, in fact, those sections in the 2004 Act have already been repealed and replaced in the 2007 legislation. And one of the, and again, it might be one of these numbering questions, because the Minister has asked in clause 88 to repeal section CE 11C. Well, Mr. Chairman, there is no 11C in this particular piece of legislation. There's CE1C. There is no 11C whatsoever. And to be fair, I checked back to the 2004 legislation, and there was no. And the question I've got is what are we repealing here? If in fact that particular section is not there, and I think it's fair to say that it's that the fact that it's not there is recognised with its replacement, where it says 1B. So instead of CE 11C after CE 11, there is a recognition that in fact there is a numbering problem here. And again, last time I identified one of these issues. The Minister told us that we'd restarted the English language at B rather than at A, and that was a system that's being used. But that does not appear to be the case here. And again, it might be one of those technical errors that can be tidied up in the clerk's office. But I think it would be something that would be useful in order to have it work properly. Mr. Chairman, but the primary purpose of me taking a call and tabling an amendment is to be of assistance to the government and to move that a supplementary order paper which goes to subclause 3 of clause 88 of this bill, and with a suggestion that instead of applying for the 2005-6 year and later income years, it would apply to the 2001 year. And the reason for this, Mr. Chairman, is relatively simple, and I think it will be known in the future as the Bill English Pay Your Tax clause. Because, sir, if one looks carefully at 1B, one sees that this focuses on the proper taxation of the market value of the benefits of accommodation. And sir, it makes it clear that tax should be paid on the benefits of accommodation which are part of the perks of the job. And I think that it's been made very, very clear over a period of time that Mr. English has had substantial benefits, and I'm not saying all through accommodation. I think there have been some other benefits as well, but somewhere in the region of $500,000 as a result of suggesting that he lived in Dipton when in fact he lived in Wellington. And the question that I've got is, why should he only pay back taxes on those benefits to 2005-2006 when in fact the situation has been there since at least 2000-2001. I think that's the general feeling that there's a lot of evidence that it's been there for that particular time. And going to the new clause 1B, the market value of the following benefits provided to a person is income of the person if the benefit is provided in relation to an office or position held by them. Subclause A, the provision of accommodation. Sir, this, I think, it might be convoluted. It might have gone through a trust or two. It might have had one name on the trust earlier and later other names on the trust later. it might have been the most expensive, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Trevor Miller.
It might have been the most expensive state house in the country, and certainly of recent leasehold arrangements, certainly the most expensive state house in the country. But, Sir, it's clear that the provision of accommodation is something which is taxable. Sir, what is also taxable is, and I'm not sure if all of my colleagues here, it might be that FBT has been paid on this on our behalf, but I doubt it. But some of my colleagues who are not Wellington-based, are now looking at me slightly askance, where it says the market value of the provision of an accommodation allowance instead of accommodation is in fact taxable. And taxable back to 2005, 2006. And I want to ask the Minister, I know he's a Wellington Minister, so he's, like me, is not interested in this. In fact, if we take into account the interest that some people might have in this question, and only Wellington members could vote on this particular issue, we could get an interesting result. But Mr. Chairman, I think we started the year talking about accommodation. In fact, I think we finished last year talking about accommodation, and I think it just shows actually how much Jerry Brownlee, who we know is right across the details of this taxation legislation, because he is a details man, Mr. Brownlee. It shows how much he still dislikes Bill English for taking his job. The fact that we are finishing up the year dealing with a clause 1B which goes to the benefits of accommodation and what is part of someone's taxable income, Mr. Speaker, and what is very clear, and I think if one goes to CE1C. In fact, it didn't go to the question of accommodation. It went to the question of the market value of the board that someone receives. And I think my understanding is that there is a difference between boarding arrangement, which normally involves living in a house with someone else, and that's in a boarding house, as opposed to the supply of accommodation, which might more logically be the entire house. So this is quite a big change, and I will say to the Minister in charge of the bill that this is an old bit of the bill. It's the bit that's been to the Select Committee, and I want to ask him whether he's aware whether or not Bill English made any personal submissions on this to the Select Committee. I'm not asking him to reveal whether Mr English pleaded not to have to pay the extra tax at the Cabinet Committee, because I think it would be inappropriate for Mr Dunn to say that, but I asked my colleagues whether there was any request from Mr English not to pay the taxation on the accommodation benefits, massive benefits, which he got over a period of time. Roughly half $500,000 accommodation and $500,000 over the 10-year. In fact, I don't want to go into a lot of detail because I think I'm happy to talk about his accommodation, but clearly there are another set of benefits which the member got as a result of pretending to live in Dipton, which go beyond that. And I think to go further is to go in any area which I would be slightly uncomfortable to head down. But I think many of the members will be aware of what makes up the balance of the $500,000 over and above the accommodation allowances that were said. Well, it is taxable, and it's clear. It is clear, Mr. Chairman, if one looks at clause 88, 1, 2, 1B of the bill. If one looks at that, it is taxable. There is no doubt that that is part of someone's income, and Mr. Speaker, I'm certain the Commissioner of Inland Revenue will be having a look at this question, and I think it's probably especially the case where the benefit is being paid where it shouldn't be being paid. where someone is actually not shifting from somewhere where they're normally resident, and one of the questions I've got is whether the Commissioner of Inland